Hello everybody and welcome to my channel, The Real Super Sam. This is a special complete history of video on a very big Spider-Man villain and I hope you enjoy. Man, here we go. The intro is well known, but now the video is everything with the Spider-Man villain named the Vulture, aka Adrian Toombs. 1 year, 3 months and 3 days ago, I made my video on the Chameleon complete history, the first Spider-Man villain ever. Now it is for the second one. Another thing, 3 years, 3 days ago, on Easter 2018, which was also April 1st, I made a video on the top 5 best Vulture stories. So I think today is a great day to upload another complete history of video and have it be on the Vulture. Adrian Toombs was an engineer who was backstabbed by his business partner, so he created the Vulture suit to get revenge on him and then became a supervillain. He fought Spider-Man at first, but throughout the decades and alternate universes, he has fought some others. The Vulture is a well-known supervillain in Marvel Comics and Spider-Man mythos who has been in everything, cartoons, games, and movies. Next month, he will have been around for 58 years, and yep, this video has all of his appearances. One thing to say is, I make these giant videos and even write the intros last, so I know how big and long this video actually is, so I do appreciate you guys clicking on the video and watching enough of it. I learned a lot of things about the Vulture that made him even more unique of a villain and Marvel rogue doing this, and some questions I had about him, like, if he was so old in the 1960s, how really is he still alive? That was actually answered. Oh, and yes, this will also be a complete history on the 3 other Spider-Man Vultures, still in chronological order along with Adrian Toombs' appearances. And you know what? The same thing for the alternate universe of Vultures like Ultimate, 2099, and Noir. The reason I make these videos and why I love making them so much is when it's done, it's like, here we go, one video on YouTube, one place on the internet where you can have everything up to date it was uploaded about the character. Going through it chronologically too, make it cool to see how much Vulture's design and character and other Vulture identities look and act after a decade or whatever. One last point is, even though some things haven't happened yet, like his appearances in the new movies, I will just mention what I can at the very end of the video. With that ginormous intro hyping us all up, here we go into the complete history of the Vulture. The Vulture's first appearance was in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 2 in May 10th, 1963. There is a new supervillain in the Marvel Universe, one who can fly. He strikes fast and silently, stealing everything he wants. His name is the Vulture. One day, Peter Parker sees he can win some money from Now Magazine, which will be the Daily Bugle, even though the Bugle first appeared in Fantastic Four issue 2. Anyway, to get the money, all he needs is a picture of the actual Vulture, and since he's Spider-Man, why not? He, by luck, stumbles upon Vulture making a notice to the newspaper, radio, and cops themselves that he is going to steal the incoming diamond shipment. Vulture celebrates, but notices Spider-Man take a picture of him, so he flies a full 180 around Spider-Man and kicks him in the head from behind, knocking him out, then carries him to a water tower and dumps him in there. With Spider-Man out of the way, the city will be all his. Vulture does steal the diamond, but Peter Parker, living up to his great responsibility, takes on Vulture again to get the diamonds back and capture the supervillain. He goes onto the Vulture and, thanks to his science skills, makes a device that causes the Vulture's wings to move out of control, so when that happens, Spidey just jumps off. At the end, Vulture spirals down onto a roof and the police arrest him. The Vulture Return just 5 issues later, being the first supervillain, or first Spider-Man villain, to make a reappearance in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 7. Since being put in jail, the Vulture has been on his best behavior and is allowed to work in the prison workshop. Secretly though, he has made a small flying device just to escape the prison wall. It works, and Vulture makes a new pair of wings and goes back to crime, robbing a jewelry store. Hearing the news, Spider-Man searches and spots the Vulture, but Vulture is ready. He has improved his wings so Spider-Man will not suspect that his trick from last time won't work today. Spider-Man of course uses his device and thinks that this is the easiest fight ever, but Vulture just dived down, then got a running start and shoots up with a double punch to Spider-Man. After that, Spider-Man just gets knocked down by the Vulture until Spidey has no choice but to land far away from him. Spidey breaks his arm in the land, too. Vulture glides over Spider-Man, and the citizens watch like he's their master now, and after this, everyone thinks nothing can stop him. With that knowledge, Vulture attempts his greatest crime yet, steal the entire payroll of the Daily Bugle staff. As coincidentally as it is, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, is in the room when Vulture is threatening JJJ, which JJJ would rather die than depart with that much money. With a hurt arm, Spider-Man moves Vulture's attention away from Jameson onto himself and now is in a fight for his life. The fight has Vulture trying to get to open areas, and he eventually makes it outside. grabbing Spider-Man and lifting him high above the city to kill him with a drop, but Spider-Man webs his wings closed and he can't fly now. Beating Vulture, he has him glide down on a web parachute. His next appearance was in the first ever teaming of the Sinister Six in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual 1. The Vulture, out of prison again, joins Dr. Octopus's group of 5 other supervillains, the Sinister Six, made up of Vulture, Mysterio, Doc Ock, Craven, Electro, and the Sandman. Vulture himself delivers a message that the new supervillain group, the Sinister Six, have captured Betty Brant, and to get her back, Jameson must get Spider-Man's attention with his paper to stop them all. Of course, since Spidey is right there, he immediately goes after them. Vulture is the 5th member to attack Spider-Man one-on-one in the Sinister Six, and for this, Vulture makes Spider-Man remove his web shooters and then sprays the floor under him, slippery, then throws a rope around his leg and drags him through the sky. Spider-Man swings upon Vulture's back and gets the location to where Betty Brant and his Aunt May are, so he leaves Vulture webbed to a pole. In Amazing Spider-Man 18, Vulture had a quick look at. We see Vulture react to the news that Green Goblin is the first villain to make Spider-Man run away. Vulture cannot believe it. Next, there was a second person to call himself the Vulture in the Amazing Spider-Man issues 48 and 49. The second Vulture, named Blackie Drago, was given a real name here already, but the first original Vulture was still not named yet in the comics. Vulture is on his deathbed in prison and calls in his cellmate Blackie Drago to talk to him. Blackie has been bugging the Vulture for his suit's secret for months, so he gives in and tells him only a man with the Vulture's wings can defeat Spider-Man, he says. Blackie Drago reveals that he caused the accident that made Vulture sick just so he can get the wings after he escapes prison. This sets Vulture off and apparently rouses him up so much that he has a heart attack and dies right then and there. Just outside the prison walls, Drago finds the Vulture wings and flies away with them on. Alone, Vulture too makes some improvements to the costume, like makes a helmet with a shortwave receiver in it. And so, mimicking the first time readers ever saw the original Vulture, Vulture 2 is stealing everything he wants and even committing greater risky crimes than the original one did. Vulture 2 is about to steal a payroll that's handcuffed to this random guy by dropping the suitcase and him on the ground. Luckily, Spider-Man shows up at that time to fight him, but today Spider-Man is actually sick and the cold isn't doing him any favors, so he barely even gets to hit the Vulture 2. In this fight, Blackie Drago easily throws around Spider-Man, thinking he is invincible and so much more powerful than Spider-Man. At the end of the issue, Spider-Man misses his punch at Vulture because of the cold and sickness, so Drago returns with a kick and he flops onto a roof in the snow. Spider-Man is left to freeze to death. In the next issue, Vulture is doing the same old. Since he defeated Spider-Man, he literally thinks no one can stop him. The Vulture now is considered the city's greatest menace, and Craven thinks he's supposed to be that, since he beat Spider-Man first in issue 47, so he hunts the Vulture, and the two fight and crash into a building below. Yeah, these two fight with Spider-Man, and then against Spider-Man. It's kind of crazy. In the end, Vulture 2 gets defeated because of Craven's new costume blasts coming out of his eyes. Spider-Man dodges and it hits the Vulture, and Spider-Man webs him up in a net for the police. In episode 4A of the 1967 Spider-Man cartoon, the second Vulture became the first ever version of the Vulture to ever be in media, in the episode titled The Sky is Falling. The Vulture has created a device that lets him control birds, and he fights Spider-Man one-on-one and beats him. Vulture is flying around terrorizing everyone after that. Spider-Man tries to stop Vulture again after he has made a ransom demand for the city for $2 million, but Vulture gets in a crane, controls it, and knocks a metal building pillar into Spider-Man in a construction site. Peter gets an idea from JJJ and pretends to be a window washer to get close to Vulture. He just splashes Vulture and it doesn't do anything. Spidey gets lifted up high and then dropped. He saves himself, webs one of the Vulture's arms to a wall, but then he calls his birds and escapes again. Since Spider-Man didn't stop him, the mayor decides to pay Vulture $2 million, but Spider-Man arrives in disguise to get in close and fight him again. Vulture is determined now to kill Spider-Man here, but he was standing still long enough for Spider-Man to sabotage his bird controlling signal in his helmet. Spider-Man gets Vulture mad enough with insults so that he calls in his bird army. He does, and all the birds swoop on Vulture and attack, causing him to flee, with Spider-Man giving the money back and saving the day. December 23rd, 1967, in episode 16A of Spider-Man 1967 cartoon, Vulture Returned. This episode opens up with the Vulture committing a robbery. Spider-Man arrives and tries to web him down, but the Vulture escapes. J. Jonah Jameson stumbles upon Vulture's hideout, which is in a malfunctioning clock tower, and so Vulture captures him. Yep, Then Vulture just continues committing amazing crimes like stealing a military rocket. Spider-Man realizes Jameson has been captured and it was by the Vulture, so there is a little fight and Peter rescues his boss from the Vulture's clutches. It ends with Vulture hanging from the wall and with a spider note on him for the police. January 13th, 1968, Blackie Drago returned in Spider-Man 1967 in episode 19A called To Catch a Spider. The made-up criminal for the show, Dr. Noah Body, has released Green Goblin, Electro, and the Vulture from prison to work together in his plan to defeat Spider-Man. Vulture has a new weapon here thanks to the Doctor. He can drop concussion grenades and rocket missiles from underneath his wings. In the big fight, Spider-Man uses his voice acting talents to get the villains to turn on each other, specifically to get Vulture mad at Electro to fire rocket missiles at him, and in turn Electro blasts him with a lightning bolt, defeating him. The original Vulture returned in Amazing Spider-Man 63 and 64, August 1st and September 1st, 1968. Vulture is back. He actually survived from his last appearance. And he's still mad at Blackie Drago for betraying him, so he steals Drago's wings from a museum. Vulture later goes to prison to free Blackie Drago for his revenge on him. They both escaped the police there. It's revealed that Vulture did survive, and he escaped from prison with a fire, and he dressed up as a cop, or a security guard, or a mailman, something like that, and escaped. Now, since he and Drago are alone, the Vulture is going to kill Drago, showing the city who is the real man of disguise. The two fight, but really, the second Vulture just gets his butt handed to him by the original. And after that, Spider-Man continues to the original, still standing Vulture to stop him. Vulture is faster than ever before, and even when he kicks Vulture with his greatest kick, he's still fighting. Vulture knows Spider-Man doesn't have a chance against him today, and bats him over and over again. Spider-Man eventually falls to the ground in a slump. As Vulture gets close to inspect, Spider-Man gets up and quickly rips open his costume's power pack to damage it. Vulture flees then to fight another day. March 22nd, 1970, the Vulture, in Spider-Man 1967 cartoon, made his last appearance in the episode called The Winged Thing. It was the first episode of Season 3, also known as Episode 40A. So this episode starts out exactly like Episode 16A did, except the colors were darker here. So in the episode, Vulture is back robbing a rich penthouse. Actually, this episode did reuse footage from his first two appearances on the show. Vulture warns people to stay off the streets and uses a rocket missile to help him commit more robberies. Spider-Man fights him. Vulture picks him up and flies him super high to drop him, but here Spider-Man shoots a web into his face. And just like the ending of the first appearance in the show, Spider-Man ruins his bird-controlling device, so the birds turn on him, forcing him to flee. And that was all with the Vulture in the 1967 show, sorry. The Amazing Spider-Man issues 127 and 128 had the misleading return of the very first Vulture, when in reality it is the first and only appearance of the third one. This story quickly becomes a big mystery, as it starts with Spider-Man seeing that a girl was murdered right outside the front door of Mary Jane's apartment, and while web-slinging later, the Vulture attacks him and Spider-Man pieces together that he must have killed the girl. While fighting Vulture, he sees that this guy is like the animal he's named of. He has talons and just rips Spidey's webbing away with his teeth. Spider-Man actually gets beaten by Vulture number 3 here. Spider-Man finds out the original Vulture is still in jail, so works on finding out this mystery. That's when this new Vulture, Vulture 3, attacks him and drops him in the river. Spider-Man finds out that this Vulture was ESU instructor Clifton Shallot, who when his course was cancelled, went crazy and did a biomutation to turn himself into a physical duplicate of Vulture with real talons and wings. Spider-Man cures him, and the person he killed he thought was another person at ESU. The guy thought that the only person who could tie him back into being the new Vulture was this one girl. He killed her, but it was actually her roommate. Our version of Vulture was in Spidey Super Stories issue 5, February 1975. The Vulture is here and stealing money quickly. This time, it's right in front of Peter Parker, which gives him a plan to stop Vulture now. Peter Parker actually shares a plan on what to do to stop Vulture. The Bugle publishes a story of the city bank having $10 million and specifically calling out the Vulture. Vulture snaps at the bait. With Spider-Man hiding in the armored truck, he surprises Vulture and creates giant spiderwebs all over the buildings to capture Vulture in a sort of big bird cage. August 1975, he was in Spidey Super Stories 11. This is a story with Spider-Man and the Electric Company because the Vulture is back in action for springtime. Spidey quickly takes back what the Vulture stole, but Vulture flies away. The next day, Spider-Man has a sunburn, so the Vulture easily ties him up, but with a Spider-Woman swings in and helps web up Vulture for the police. February 1977, Vulture was in the first What If issue ever. In the story, it shows what would have happened if Spider-Man talked with the Fantastic Four some more during issue 1 and became a member of the FF, now calling themselves the Fantastic Five, and on 2 pages going after the Vulture. Unlike Chameleon, Vulture always would have committed crimes that 1 week and had a rivalry with Spider-Man. Here, the Human Torch just burns Adrian's wings off, causing him to fall, and the Fantastic Five to save him. March 1st and April 1st, 1977, finally, the Vulture returned to comic books in the Spectacular Spider-Man issues 4 and 5. Adrian Toombs is back on the prowl, and this lousy bum tries strong-arming the Vulture into paying protection, so he drops him in the Hudson. Mr. Morgan is the mob boss of that guy and goes to Adrian's fix-it shop the next day to work with him to take over the underworld. Vulture is understandably insulted by the offer and attacks them all and embarrasses Morgan in front of the cops. Vulture has spent his free time increasing his suit's strength to get revenge on Spider-Man. To get his attention, he is swooping down on the city and lifting people up to hang on the side of a building. So Spider-Man arrives to stop him. To his surprise, the Vulture has new wings that can shred Spidey's webbing like tissue. This time, Spider-Man really is up against the full power of flight. Vulture's power pack is also newly equipped. It shocks Spider-Man when he tries to break it open. The electric shock knocks Spider-Man out too. Just at that moment, the Hitman shows up in his first appearance and attacks Vulture to kill him for Mr. Morgan. Vulture escapes Hitman, but the new guy finds him again, purchasing him and leading it to a chase. The final fight here takes place in Central Park subway construction, and Spider-Man, being tired, has a last stand moment against the Bird. Spider-Man tricks Vulture by playing possum to get up close to him so he can grab him, spin him around to get his power pack shot by Hitman, defeating him for the day. Next, Vulture was in What If issue 7, February 1978. This story is about if other characters became Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy issue 15, and here it shows Flash Thompson going against the Vulture. When Vulture tries to fly away, Captain Spider, which is Flash Thompson's Spider-Man name, holds on to him. Vulture kicks him down, sending Flash falling to his death. Vulture was next in What If issue 8. As just an Easter egg, as another version of himself called Culture Vulture. February 1980, he was in What If issue 19. Yes, another What If story. Here it has Daredevil and Peter Parker, since Peter stayed on as a TV star, going up against the original Sinister Six. Daredevil is the one to knock out Vulture this time. July and August 1980, Vulture returned to main continuity in Spectacular Spider-Man issues 44 and 45. The Vulture has changed his ways from a costume fool to a crime genius behind the scenes here. The members of the mob and are carrying the body of recently murdered crime boss Big Louie. The priest overseeing this funeral is a man named Malachi Toombs. He explains that after the retirement of the Kingpin, the mobs of New York are struggling to control his former empire. Malachi's uncle is trying to take over as the new mob boss. And let's just say, there's just the fact that Big Louie had other ideas that led to his abrupt death. His uncle is Adrian Toombs, the Vulture, duh, and after Spider-Man was sprayed by Malachi with knockout gas, Spidey wakes up to see Vulture standing over him as his body gets moved into a furnace, with him chained up. After tonight, Vulture will be the new Kingpin. There is one issue, though, when gangster Black Alfred comes in and brings Vulture a trinket, but it was all a trick as Vulture knew of Black Alfred killing the other members trying to impress Vulture by getting the trinket. Vulture let him do this to weed out the dead weight, but Black Alfred also wanted to beat up the Vulture, so Adrian beats him up. Of course, later Spider-Man escapes the Vulture's trap, creating a huge fire where Vulture takes his nephew and escapes. When the two are walking down an alleyway, the mobster Black Alfred is looking for revenge against Vulture for killing Big Louie and hurting him. He shoots but hits Malachi accidentally, since Malachi leaped in the way to save his uncle's life. This pushes Vulture into a bloody rage, a fist of fury, pounding on Black Alfred and wanting him dead. Spider-Man shows up before that can happen, though. Spider-Man is up against a crazy Vulture tonight, and they go swinging across the whole city. The Vulture here even does some acrobatics. Another thing he does is play possum to get close to Spider-Man for an attack, but Spidey's spider sense warns him. Their fight goes into Grand Central Station, and Vulture speeds away, but he doesn't see the glass wall above the doors and crashes headfirst into it, ending his fight with just muttering about his dead nephew. This crash Vulture took changed the character for some time actually. It even made Spider-Man a bit sick after watching it happen. Next, Vulture was in Spectacular Spider-Man 56. He was just a cameo here as a resident in a hospital with a broken arm and leg after that crash from issue 45. January 1982, Vulture was in Amazing Spider-Man 224. It's been years since Vulture started his criminal career, and today it seems to have been it, as he goes to physical therapy now that he can walk from his injuries. After Vulture's all better though, he will go back to lockup. At physical therapy, he meets a man named Nathan Lubinsky, who is at the time Aunt May's boyfriend. The two start chatting it up, and Nate gives Vulture a new positive outlook on life, even at their old ages. Later, Vulture, with his engineering mind, takes apart the training machines and builds a new flying harness just to get him to fly to freedom. Vulture is back with his old suit, and on his best crime spree ever. After he spends time robbing stores, he goes back to a nursing home to hang out there with the other old birds. One night, Peter Parker is at the nursing home to have supper with May Parker and Nathan Lubinsky. There, he sees his old foe, Adrian Toombs, playing poker with Nathan, and Vulture quickly realizes that Parker knows who he really is, so he threatens him with a gun under his coat and forces him into his room and ties him up. Little does he know, right as when Adrian turns around, that's where the wall crawler shows up, and Spider-Man calls Vulture old. Vulture gets reckless and mad. With Spider-Man gaining on him, Vulture grabs a hostage, but finds out it's his new friend Nathan Lubinsky. The shock of almost hurting his new friend, who gave him his life back, so to say, makes Vulture release Nathan and fly far, far away, ending the story. On February 13th, 1982, the Vulture, Adrian Toombs Vulture, made his first media appearance in Spider-Man 1981, episode 23, The Vulture Has Landed. The Vulture has been flying around New York, kidnapping scientists and holding them hostage in his lair. His last one is Harry Osborn, but instead of getting Harry, he gets Peter Parker, thinking he is Harry. Vulture is doing this to control a NASA space probe. His hideout is a flying base above the clouds, and he wants Peter, thinking he's Harry, to make radar jamming paint to hide his base from everyone. Also, Vulture here has robotic birds that do what he wants. He's been using these birds to threaten everyone. After Vulture leaves, Peter becomes Spider-Man and fights the Vulture. The Jupiter space probe containing rare space rocks is scheduled to splash down in 1 hour. Spidey figures out that the Vulture's plans are to capture that probe and steal the rare gems. Spider-Man gets there and webs Vulture up, capturing him. May and June 1983, Vulture was in Amazing Spider-Man issues 240 and 241. These past few weeks, Toombs has been hiding out in a house between committing crimes and as the Vulture, living in a suburb, until he reads the new paper to find out that Bestman Electronics is back in business and immediately calls to travel back up to New York. Adrian starts to attack Bestman Electronics, and Spider-Man shows up to reunite with his old nemesis. In this story, Vulture has bombs hidden in his wings, which he drops everywhere to hurt the webhead. Vulture stops and grabs Gregory Bestman, and while Spider-Man tries to help him, Bestman kicks him and that knocks Spider-Man out after everything, letting the Vulture win. Before Vulture kills Gregory Bestman, he reminds him of what he did to him. And now we get Vulture's full origin story. Adrian Toombs was a genius inventor who created a harness that lets ordinary people fly. His partner was Gregory Bestman, working at Bestman and Toombs Electronics. But Adrian learned that Gregory was embezzling money from the company and manipulated the whole situation so that when Toombs discovered it, he was unable to stop Bestman from firing him, and he assumed full control over the company to sell it. Mad, Toombs grabbed at Bestman and surprisingly lifted him off the ground easily, and doing that, he realized how much power his flight suit had given him. Toombs then created a whole gimmick as the Vulture was born, and first off he attacked Bestman Electronics, sending Gregory into hiding, and Vulture found a new career. Soon, the police surround Toombs' new nest and quickly throws Bestman out, but Spider-Man saves him. A fight ensures, and Spidey rips the power pack right off Vulture's back, sending him to prison. The good news is that Bestman gets what was coming to him as he gets justice for his crimes. Next came Web of Spider-Man issue 3, June 1985. In jail, Vulture reads about this new group called the Voltrons, and since Vulture again built a new harness secretly in jail, escapes right then and there. Vulture, the next day, confronts the Voltrons and will make them quit since he is the one and only Vulture. The Vulture easily beats up all the members of the Voltrons, while Vulturions. Unknowingly, a part of the battle happens in front where Peter Parker and Mary Jane are eating. Spider-Man tries to stop Vulture, sees his costume is less sturdy than every other time they fought, but Vulture still escapes. He appeared next in Daredevil issue 225, December 1985. The Vulture is desperate for money now, and so he will defile one's grave for money tonight. After Daredevil sees the Vulture trying to dig up a girl named Heather's body for her jewels she was buried with, Daredevil attacks him. Vulture gets away, but later starts to egg Foggy Nelson on to commit suicide, but Daredevil takes Foggy down and fights the Vulture again. Vulture taunts Daredevil and tells him that he senses his death and a wish to die inside of the crime fighter. Matt insists that he wants to live and eventually lures the Vulture to a small room, turns out the lights, and is able to knock the villain unconscious. Next, Vulture made an appearance in Secret Wars 2, issue 7. Vulture is just a member of a giant group of supervillains that are attacking the Thing. He fought Spider-Man again in Web of Spider-Man issues 23 and 24. In issue 23, it is shown that the Vulture will return soon, more chilling than ever. This time in the story, the Vulture got involved in an Atlantic City casino racketeering. Toombs is doing this to prepare for his own funeral, since he knows he is getting much older and thinks his life is almost complete. Spider-Man in his leather black suit sees all this one day and fights Vulture. In the end, Vulture was stopped by the Hobgoblin since the casino was under his protection. Of course, seeing Hobgoblin attacking him makes him fly away. Next, for the Vulture came Power Pack issue 33. The Vulture has robbed an armored car, and Warlock and Sunspot, wanting to prove to themselves that they can be new mutant superheroes, try to follow the Vulture but fail. December 1988, in Web of Spider-Man issue 45, the Vulture was the Predator in the desert. After his appearance in Web of Spider-Man 24, he learned that Morris Diamond, the person he tried to sell his special dice to from issue 24, broke into his hotel room later and stole those dice from him, and now Vulture will make him pay. So Vulture destroys a plane Diamond is flying on, which Peter Parker is flying on as well. On the ground, Vulture flies by and grabs Diamond. At the Vulture's lair, the villain demands that Diamond return the notes he stole and the secret plastic that he used to create his trick dice. Morris begins to laugh because the notes were in the plane that the Vulture shot down. Furious, the Vulture threatens to inject Morris with his taxidermy formula when Spider-Man suddenly arrives on the scene. Spider-Man gets stuck with the formula, but still manages to knock out the Vulture before becoming unconscious. Vulture next made his appearances in the New Mutants issues 83 through 86, which issues 84 and 85 and 86 had his appearances during the Acts of Vengeance Marvel crossover event. Vulture's story starts in jail, getting laughed at again because he is so old, and the fact that there is a supervillain group being put together and he isn't even asked to join. He sees a picture of Nitro the Exploding Man in the paper and comes up with a plan. The Vulture will release Nitro to create so much devastation that no one will forget him. The Vulture and the Tinkerer are together this time, and the man who organized Vulture's escape, he wants the superhero Speedball killed. Vulture tries and goes against the New Mutants, but his wings get burned and he falls to the ground, being arrested. The Vulture next appeared in the second lineup for the Sinister Six, specifically in The Amazing Spider-Man issues 336 to 339. In issue 336, the Kingpin hires the Vulture to kill a nuisance of his, Boulevard Trask. During Vulture's attack at an unveiling, Spider-Man shows up and he needs a hostage, so he grabs Aunt May, but her boyfriend Nathan Lubinsky claws at Vulture to get him to let go of her, and to end it, Vulture flies high in the air and therefore killing Nathan, who was holding on to him, the same Nathan Lubinsky who befriended him in issue 224. This issue is also where Dr. Octopus recruits Vulture and helps him escape all the police helicopters. Later, Vulture is stealing a tank on Governor's Island. Spider-Man attacks him and wants justice for Nathan, but Vulture escapes. In the last issue, when the Sinister Six thinks Spider-Man got sprayed with poison, Doc Ock reveals his real plan. He was lying to the whole Sinister Six, and now they can't have cocaine or they will convulse when they take the drug. Anyway, the only cure is a stolen Bruinite. Furious at being double-crossed, the Sinister Six attack Dr. Octopus, but he is able to defeat all their attacks with his mechanical arms. When the authorities begin arriving on the scene, the Sinister Six flee, all wanting revenge on Doc Ock later. December 1991, Vulture was in a mini-story as the antagonist in the Marvel Holiday Special. He was the villain of a tale some guy talks about when Spider-Man saved his life. Vulture next appeared in the third Sinister Six, starring Spider-Man in 1990, issues 18 to 23, which was January to June 1992. In this story, there's nothing really unique with the Vulture. He just goes with the rest of the Sinister Six. For example, he's with the 4 other members, and they want revenge against Dr. Octopus. Things don't go their way and end up working with Doc Ock, except there's a moment when the Vulture snaps and questions Dr. Octopus and suspects Electro being in cahoots with the Doc. But after that, nothing unique happens. Check out my top 5 best Sinister Six stories for more info, and Vulture escapes in the end. At the same time that last story was going on, Vulture had his greatest appearances during the Spectacular Spider-Man issues 186 to 188, called Funeral Arrangements, in March to May 1992. Adrian Toombs, the Vulture, is dying. He has gotten spinal cancer from the flying harness he has been wearing while committing supervillain feats, and now he is settling all of his old goals before he dies, like killing a guy who snitched him out to the cops. Vulture finally confronts his old business partner Gregory Bestman again and tells him all this, then kills him gleefully like a true animalistic vulture. Spider-Man finds the Vulture and whips him. Vulture is flying like never before, pushing himself to the max since there's no point in worrying about safety anymore. With that, he throws Spider-Man off of him and goes into his next location. Vulture goes to Aunt May's house and asks her forgiveness for killing his friend and her fiancé Nathan Lubinski. Aunt May gets pissed and slaps him since, yeah, he is still a murderer and an intruder to her life now. The Vulture flies into J. Jonah Jameson's office later and announces the death of Spider-Man. The Vulture goes back to Aunt May's house to force her for forgiveness with Peter Parker there with her. That's where Peter snaps and punches Vulture, sending him tumbling down the stairs. Peter then, to protect Aunt May, lets Vulture kidnap him. There, Vulture tells Peter that he can't die without Aunt May's forgiveness. Peter charges at Vulture. Vulture moves out of the way, making Peter fall out of the farm silo. Then Peter changes into Spider-Man and fights the Vulture. This is looking like the last battle between these two old enemies. The last thing Vulture is going to do now before he dies, the greatest thing he will ever accomplish, kill the Spectacular Spider-Man. The Vulture has improved his wing tech and electronics. Spider-Man gets electrocuted by his new wings because he is hanging on to him. He is sending his power pack over the edge to kill Spider-Man with. They fly higher and higher, almost to the stars, while still wrestling with each other. All the way until Vulture, glowing because of his power pack, stops and explodes. On fire, the Vulture shoots down to the ground as Spider-Man saves his life. Both exhausted on the ground, the Vulture quietly mumbles something to Spider-Man. Spider-Man asks what he said, and crying, Vulture asks, "Why didn't you let me die?" Spider-Man grabs him by the collar, pulls him up to his face, and says, "It's not going to be that easy." The police take Vulture to May Parker so he can apologize to her. Then they take him to lockup. Aunt May visits him one day and tells him the only real person to forgive him is God, and maybe even himself. The Vulture then made his first video game appearance in the NES game Spider-Man Return of the Sinister Six in 1992. He was a boss battle and in the Sinister Six. On the Sega CD, Vulture was in another video game called The Amazing Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin in 1993. He was a very short boss. Next time there was a Vulture, it was during the Spider-Man 2099 comics in issue 6 through 8, introducing Vulture 2099. The Vulture here saves Spider-Man 2099 from the public eye patrol and brings him to his hideout land. Spider-Man learns more about this guy, and Vulture considers them both freakers and says they should stay together. But then it is shown that Vulture 2099 is a monstrous cannibal, and Spider-Man then fights him. The Vulture is younger and has more sharp edges in his costume, but Spidey still gets to wail on him, knocking him out. Next, Vulture was in Lethal Foes of Spider-Man Miniseries 1 through 4, September to December 1993. In this miniseries, the Vulture is helping the second Ringer for revenge while looking for a cure for his cancer. Trying to steal a weapon called the Nuclear Blaster, Spider-Man shows up to protect people, but he gets thrown around and knocked out. While working on the Nuclear Blaster, Vulture discovers that this tool can be used to cure his cancer, but he still has to get this blaster away from his teammates and use it all for himself. So the next issues become a giant chase for who can get the Nuclear Blaster and beat all the other villains. In the end, Vulture gets knocked out of the game by Strikeback. His next appearances were in Amazing Spider-Man issues 386 through 388, February to April 1994. Tonight, the Vulture, being a secret master of electromagnets, he creates a device out of a radio to escape. He busts out with the help of some henchmen, and since Spider-Man didn't allow him to die in a funeral arrangement story, he will try to live forever. He wants to test the Doctor's theory on draining the youth force from someone and giving it to someone else, and he had him as a test subject in mind. Spider-Man sees this and stops Vulture, saving the Doctor's life. But the end of the battle has Vulture draining the youth from Spider-Man. Now Adrian Toombs is young again with hair and decides not to kill Spider-Man because he may need him again, and he is just in too good a mood. He feels like he can take on anyone now. He even created a new suit, one with more weapons and shiny armor parts. But things go wrong and his youth leaves him. During this, he stumbles upon Chameleon and Green Goblin's plan to get Spider-Man by using Peter Parker, by building Peter Parker's parents as robots, etc. We don't need to go through all that in this video. The two oldest Spider-Man villains team up there, and Chameleon tells Vulture he can help him restore his youth by using artificial life. In the end of the story, the Vulture beats up the android May Parker. Spider-Man snaps at him. Then the Vulture, when Spidey's distracted, grabs the android mom and drains her artificial energy into him, making him young again. Well, young again, but it ends with Vulture in a catatonic condition after absorbing that life, leaving him empty inside, literally. Apparently. There was a Vulture who appeared in What If, Volume 2, Issues 67 and 68. This reality, the Vulture works for Dr. Doom, who has hired him to destroy something for him. Vulture, in a new costume, returned and fought the Prowler in the Prowler 1994 series, 4-issue miniseries, issues 2 through 4, December 1994 to February 1995. Today is another day for Vulture to destroy Bestman Electronics. Thanks to his new look, he can destroy it from the inside out. But the Vulture attacks this Prowler wannabe called Night Creeper. Adrian Toombs is faster now and much more powerful. In fact, the reason he is doing all this is to kill everyone who knew him as an old man. He almost kills Night Creeper in their battle. In issue 4, Prowler and Night Creeper team up to stop him, but Vulture still gets away. There was then a two-parter across the main Spider-Man titles, Amazing Spider-Man 396 and Spectacular Spider-Man 219. In this story, the Vulture teams up with the Owl. The Vulture has a deadly virus he is going to use to continue to kill people who knew him as the frail old man, and he now is working with the Owl so people who remember the old Owl will all die too. This story has a shocking moment when the Vulture maliciously breaks open a guy's face and reveals the truth to Owl, that his virus has no antidote. This makes the Owl turn against him, and yeah, Vulture used this poison on Spider-Man. But the Vulture keeps saying that he and the Owl are like brothers, both birdmen of the skies. Actually, Vulture does have an antidote and gives it to Owl, who uses it to save a life. Daredevil is the hero to wrap up Vulture in this issue. February 13th, 1995, the Vulture was in an SNES game titled Spider-Man, in his new youthful look. He was in Spider-Man Funeral for an Octopus, issues 1 and 2. The Vulture is flying to a secret rendezvous that has been arranged. He wonders how the organizer of this meeting managed to get his information. That's when he is ambushed by the Scarlet Spider, who is surprised to see the Vulture is on the loose again. However, Vulture manages to distract Spider-Man and escape. Later, Scarlet Spider sees the Vulture reunited with the other Sinister Six villains as they are trying to put the team together again after Dr. Octopus's death. The Vulture and the team attack Elias Hardgrove as he has made a helmet that controls Doc Ock's arms. But the original Peter Parker Spider-Man wears the helmet and easily knocks out Vulture with these new mechanical arms he's wearing. May 1995, the Vulture was part of the Sinister 7 in Spider-Man Unlimited issue 9, even though it says Sinister 6 on the cover. In the story, it's the Sinister 7. The Vulture is a member of this new team, and getting into clashes with the member Hobgoblin, the Seven are teamed up to go and kill Kane, the kinda messed up Spider-Man clone. In fact, the Vulture makes it a point to not take any more weapons for himself, just to prove that he's better, something like that. In the battle, Vulture gets grabbed by Kane and his hand gets stung by Kane, forcing Vulture to drop him. And the Scarlet Spider shoots impact webbing on Vulture, then fires his wrist stingers in him, knocking him out. He was next in What If, Volume 2, Issue 76. Here, the Vulture commits a robbery, or tries to, just like his last crime in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but Spider-Man stops him, then steals the diamonds Vulture was going to steal. It's a what-if story. The Vulture Return in Spider-Man issue 62. The Vulture is back to kill and haunt, foreshadowing for a comeback. Spider-Man Unlimited issue 10, September 1995 was his comeback. While flying, the Vulture experiences so much sudden pain, it sends him crashing down onto a parked car. That's when he notices that his hands are becoming twisted with arthritis. He didn't realize this to his horror, that his newfound youth is fading away and he is becoming old again. The Vulture now is going around stealing the youth from anyone, so he can remain younger, but is not becoming young enough. The Vulture's age has been going crazy. In his most recent arrest, he became old suddenly and used that to escape and stay low before becoming young again. Scarlet Spider arrives one night to stop his rampage again, as Vulture is trying to rob a new youth-stealing harness. Actually, in this issue, we also hear that Bestman Electronics is officially a dead company. The two fight and Scarlet Spider manages to rip off Vulture's wings, but Vulture quickly grabs the hero and drains his life force from him, but it doesn't change Scarlet Spider or him because Scarlet Spider rigged up a new vest to counter that attack. So that was the Vulture's defeat, whipped to the side of a wall. Scarlet Spider actually tricks the Vulture into thinking he's turned old again, which is kind of a funny moment. Vulture 2099 then was in a story in Spider-Man 2099 issues 38 through 41. In issue 38, Vulture 2099 has returned and is attempting to kidnap someone, but Goblin 2099 stops him actually. The Vulture later decides with the Goblin gone, everyone and thing he wants to eat will all be his. But Spider-Man 2099 actually beats him up while he is on the ground just in a coat with his razor claws. The end. Vulture 29 actually returned next in the Vulture chronologically. In Spider-Man 2099 meets Spider-Man. It's not that good of a story actually. When the classic Amazing Spider-Man somehow gets into the future, Vulture 2099 wants to kill him, but Pete just flips him upside down and stops him. January 1996, the Vulture was in a flashback story in Untold Tales of Spider-Man issue 5. After issue 7 of Amazing Spider-Man issue 7, the Vulture had an automatic pair of wings to fly him and release him from prison, so he's back on the hunt again for jewels and stuff. The Vulture is so sure of himself now that he tells Spider-Man where he will commit his crime tomorrow night. Vulture is going to steal the accelerator weapon, and he steals it from the Hulk character General Ross. Spider-Man works to get it from Vulture. Adrian Toombs almost gets away, but it becomes the decision of keep the accelerator or die. So Vulture lets the accelerator go to fight another day. February 11th, 1996, Vulture was in another video game, Spider-Man the Sinister Six on PC. And on February 17th, 1996, he debuted in Spider-Man the Animated Series. He was in episode 26 titled Shriek of the Vulture. Adrian Toombs' company, Toombs Aerodynamics, is at risk of being bought out by Norman Osborn, Oscorp, but before that can happen, he will eliminate Norman. One night, the Vulture goes off on the hunt to test his suit, so he flies around until he sees a young kid roller skating, then attacks him and steals his youth, making the kid old and him young again in seconds. Luckily, Spider-Man was right there and attacks the new villain. Adrian learns that his new youth only lasts a few minutes, so when he starts to turn old again, he runs away, leaving Spider-Man to see that the kid has turned young again. The next night, he steals a security guard's youth and attacks Norman Osborn. We see here that Vulture has a blaster gun with him, and he would have succeeded if not for Spider-Man. Spider-Man did manage to get a picture of the Vulture, and sees that the Vulture might be Adrian Toombs. That's when we get the Vulture's origin story. He made his costume himself, even though everyone said he was just dreaming about wanting to fly. His talon gloves are made from the mystical power of the Tablet of Time, which is how he can steal youth force. Since his plan to kill Norman Osborn failed, he tries his son that day, and Spider-Man is there and saves Harry, but fails to capture Vulture. And at Toombs' Aerodynamics, a fight takes place between Spider-Man and Vulture. After Toombs steals Deborah Whitman's life force and forces Peter gets alerted, something weird is happening there from Deborah. Adrian tries to attack Flash Thompson, who's also there, but Spider-Man saves him from turning old. In the fight, Vulture quickly places a neural neutralizer disc on Spider-Man's head, rendering him motionless, and he leaves, just as the explosions start taking the building down that he himself activated. In the end, he takes Spider-Man's youth from him, gaining his strength and stamina, and unmasks him, revealing him as an old man. The next week, February 24th, 1996, in Spider-Man Taz episode 27 was titled The Final Nightmare, with, again, the Vulture as the villain. Or a villain. While gloating, an explosion throws Vulture off balance, causing him to drop Spider-Man, apparently into the flaming building. Thinking he's dead, he just goes on with his day. With this new power and thinking Spider-Man's dead, he grabs Norman Osborn from his helicopter fast since his life force will soon fade away. Just before he's about to kill Osborn though, something happens. Vulture's in incredible pain as he turns into the Man-Spider and flies off into the night. How did this happen? He goes to Kurt Connors for help since Kurt won his award for neurogenic research, telling him everything. Connors explains that Vulture needs Spider-Man to transfer the Man-Spider disease back into Spider-Man's body. While that happens, Scorpion returns and wants to be normal again with neogenics, so Vulture and Scorpion will work together to get Spider-Man and cure each other, since Vulture learns from Kurt Connors that Spider-Man is alive still. When Spider-Man arrives, he gets caught by Scorpion, thinking Kurt's betrayed him. The Vulture puts his disease back into Spider-Man's body with altered talents, so he thought. Kurt betrayed the Vulture. He made it so Spider-Man's youth went back into him, but the disease stayed in the Vulture, leaving Vulture a Man-Spider Vulture monster. The episode and season ends with that. There was another Vulture 2099 story in Spider-Man 2099 issues 45 and 46. The Vulture, who has been hiding in the church, discovers that Father Jennifer is still alive and decides to take her with him as a hostage. As he flies out of the church and above the floodwaters, the Vulture begins plotting his endgame that will see all of his enemies destroyed. Yeah, he has Jennifer as a hostage to bring Spider-Man to him. Spider-Man tells Vulture to let the father go and take him instead. Or, wait a minute. If it's a... Never mind, It's a comic. I'll just go with it. However, the Vulture intends to kill Spider-Man 2099 and himself, revealing that he knows that Spider-Man is also Miguel O'Hara. This revelation was told to him by Miguel's own brother, Gabriel, who was recently revealed to be the Goblin. Shocked by his revelation, Spider-Man is struck in the shoulder by one of Vulture's talons. The Vulture then reveals that he has also rigged the building with explosives and lunges at the hero. After a struggle, the Vulture realizes that a one-on-one battle will take too long and flees, vowing to get revenge at a later time. His next appearance was in Untold Tales of Spider-Man, issue 12. Vulture is a cameo in this issue, and he just gets away. Vulture 2099 made its last appearances to date in 2099 World of Tomorrow issues 4 through 6. Vulture was revealed as the overall leader of the Wild Boys. They are ultimately just a bad guy group. Vulture tries to control someone to be his slave fighter. And this is where Vulture 2099 dies. Vulture, along with the Wild Boys and his daughter Fiona, was killed by this guy called a Phalanx in a giant explosion. Okay, April 1997, he was in Untold Tales of Spider-Man, issue 20. There's a crime organization boss who wants a competitor dead and has gotten Vulture released from prison to help him out. While pondering his life after reading about how the Green Goblin made Spider-Man turn yellow and not him, he sees a guy behind him on the roof. The guy is Jason Ionello, a member of Flash Thompson's popular group at Midtown High, but he is about to commit suicide. The Vulture realizes this and yells about him taking the easy way out and how things will get better, and to focus those feelings into something productive. As ironic as it is, the Vulture was sprung from prison to take a life, but he unintentionally saved a life this time. Anyway, while flying he sees Spider-Man and slashes his back, then flies to his target, which is Wilson Fisk, the future kingpin of crime. Before he can do anything to Fisk, Spider-Man weblines his back and pulls him out of his office. While back-talking to each other, the Vulture realizes what Spider-Man is saying about him being an attack dog, and he should be in his golden years now. This shocks Vulture into stopping and shamefully turns himself into the police. May 3rd, 1997, Vulture made an appearance in Spider-Man the Animated Series, episode 46, Partners. The Vulture has been tied up in Scorpion's apartment and unable to control the random changes from young to old, but when Scorpion gets captured by Alistair Smythe, Vulture leaves with Scorpion's girlfriend to save him. During the battle, Vulture easily dodges all of the laser blasts. Then, he gets into the neogenic youth switcher and switches with a young baby Silvermane, making himself young permanently. After that, he flies away. Next time Vulture attacked was in Sensational Spider-Man issues 16 through 18, which was made through August 1997. The Vulture sees the Prowler, and it's time for revenge on the Prowlers from the miniseries he had. This time, though, the Sensational Spider-Man is here, too, and these old-time rivals battle it out again. A lot of this is just against Spider-Man and the Prowler at the start, so Vulture is pushed aside by Spidey. Until the moment Prowler is webbed up, so Vulture can easily kill Prowler for trying to foil his plans. But the Prowler lives, Vulture escapes, but now Spider-Man is the only person alive who remembers him as an old man and will kill Spider-Man, which will give Vulture, finally, a brand new life, as he says. When Vulture is ready for a final fight with Spider-Man, the character DK intervenes and grabs the Vulture, pulling him down. DK is like Tar Pit from DC Comics. Doing that, pulling him down into his tar, it almost kills the Vulture. Toombs actually reverts back to his old age after that, presumably due to DK's power having negated the youth effect. After that, Vulture Return in Spider-Man the Animated Series episodes 54 through 58 in the section of Season 5 called The Six Forgotten Warriors, September 19th, 1997 to October 17th. Vulture is still young, and Mysterio's replacement in the new Sinister Six, Insidious Six on the show. He works with the Sinister Six for the Kingpin so he can take over the world with a hidden Doomsday weapon. If anything unique with Vulture happens here, it's that he is always the pilot, which makes sense since he is the only member who can actually fly with his powers. To get the special old keys for the Kingpin, Vulture attacks the hero Miss America, who is now an old lady. It is a good addition to the Six, especially since he was in the original Sinister Six in the comics. Actually, I know I just did complete history right now, but he's been in every Sinister Six lineup in this point, at least in the comics. So, he was kind of a required addition to the Sinister Six in the show, I guess. Next, Toombs was in the Sensational Spider-Man issues 26 through 28. In issue 26, it shows that now Vulture is an old man again. The judge lets him go, since what trouble can he cause now, huh? Yeah, huh. But Adrian Toombs is still after Spider-Man, obsessed with the one thought of killing him. On TV, he sees a new hero called the Hornet talking about how the world doesn't need to worry about Spider-Man anymore. This ticks the Vulture off enough to go after him. If you didn't know, the Hornet is one of the 3 new identities Peter Parker becomes after Norman Osborn frames Spider-Man for murder. In the fight with the Vulture, without web shooters and being able to fly, the Hornet is out of his element with a man who owns the skies. He still beats the Vulture, and Vulture yells out that the Hornet is really Spider-Man, but that doesn't really go anywhere. Next came the Vulture being in Spider-Man Chapter 1, Issues 3, and Issue 0. This is a retelling of Spider-Man's first appearance fighting the Vulture. He even defeats him the same way. And in Issue 0, it is literally the even earlier parts of Vulture's origin story. Here, he doesn't even fight Spider-Man in this story, which is in Chapter 1, Issue 0. Next, Vulture was in the novel Spider-Man The Gathering of the Sinister Six. The stuff with Vulture can be summed up as the Chameleon goes to his apartment and recruits him into the new Sinister Six. Vulture was next in the comic titled Wolverine and Cable Guts and Glory, which came out October 1999. The hero Cable makes a mistake walking into the Vulture's nest, especially when he is trying to become a master thief for the first time. After Cable calls him old, Vulture beats the snot out of him and gets away with it. In December 1999, The Amazing Spider-Man issue 453 and Peter Parker Spider-Man issue 12 both came out. The Vulture was part of another Sinister Six. The Vulture has been reduced to picking up scraps from other successful robberies, and Sandman knows this, so he recruits him into the new Sinister Six team. To Sandman, the Vulture is trustworthy, and him and Sandman get along just fine. Other than that, at the very end, Vulture gets hit with one laser blast, and that ends his role in this new Sinister Six. He is basically just another member here too, for fights. The next month, in January 2000, the first Vulture appearance of the decade, it was in Spider-Girl issue 18, with the first appearance of another Vulture character named Raptor. There is a new villain in town, Raptor, a new Vulture-type character in the Spider-Girl dimension. Spider-Girl arrives and fights this new female Vulture type, but Raptor lifts Spider-Man into the air and easily tricks her into this position. Raptor bats Spider-Girl so much she falls and Raptor escapes. We learn Tony Davis is a partner of Raptor, but he is crazy and hits her for failing his plan, since he was the one who made her suit. He is her ex-boyfriend who has pushed her into this life of crime. Yes, Blackie Drago, the original second Vulture, was her father. And yeah, at the end the two ladies fight. During this issue, it has the appearance of a new superhero called The Buzz, who also helps out. Raptor tries to fly away, but crashes into a giant spider's web. The Vulture appeared in Spider-Man Revenge of the Sinister Six novel. In this Sinister Six, it is Vulture, Doc Ock, Electro, Mysterio, Chameleon, and a new rogue named Pity. They are working for a very rich old man named The Gentleman. During this time, Vulture and Doc Ock are enemies with each other, but anyway, there's a time when the Vulture fights Spider-Man, swinging him around the city and the buildings and almost gets beaten, but escapes. I also assume that Vulture and Doc Ock being enemies is from when they fought each other in the last Sinister Six comic in this video, in this list. He later, in the book, with the rest of the Sinister Six, have a final battle in the Daily Bugle, but fail to kill Spider-Man, but they still are able to escape for next time. February 10th, 2001, in Spider-Man Unlimited, the Counter-Earth version of Vulture made his debut in Episode 7, titled Cry Vulture. This version of Vulture, Counter-Earth Vulture, he is a rebel hero and fights to free people from captured from experiments. Vulture comes from a wealthy family who were some of the few humans accepted by bestial society. During his childhood, he hung around with bestial's children who persecuted humans. He devoted his life to preventing human suffering, creating a costume capable of flight and becoming a vigilante. When he and Spider-Man meet, Spidey accidentally stops him from saving someone, but eventually the two work together to save captured people. Vulture is okay with the idea of an eye for an eye justice, but Spider-Man convinces the captors not to, and Vulture flies away thinking Spider-Man's a wannabe. Vulture was in Web Spinner's Tales of Spider-Man issues 15 through 16, March and April 2001. The Vulture is back in New York City and on the hunt for a dishonest buck. Vulture's big plan tonight is to steal a valuable necklace, but the person he thought had it moves because of a divorce, so he proceeds to go to kidnapping a child for the big ransom. Spider-Man tries to stop Vulture right then and there in the sky, but Vulture uses his new weapons to electrify Spider-Man, causing him to shock and fall. Yeah, Vulture has this new compound that can conduct and expand with electricity, then blow up. You probably see where this is going with his suit and how he will be defeated. Anyway, he gets his necklace, but decides to keep the girl for a while just to stay safe. What a monster. Yeah, Spider-Man and the cops then attack Vulture while still needing to save the girl. The end has great dialogue between the two. Spider-Man slams Vulture down and questions him on how he can treat others' lives so casually. The Vulture describes how he wishes he had someone to struggle on his behalf when he was younger, like Spider-Man does for all the innocents. Spider-Man then tells him that Toombs can still be the good man he's supposed to be, but Vulture decides to run then. While falling through the air, Vulture accidentally electrifies himself with Spider-Man, and this stops his dark plan. May 30th, 2001, the Vulture was in Spider-Man 2 The Sinister Six game on the GBC. Vulture was in Spider-Man Secret of the Sinister Six novel next. There's a surprising moment with the Vulture here. When the gentleman is abusing his superpowered hench girl named Pity, the Vulture gets worried for her. But other than that, he fights Spider-Man one day, kind of distracted and fighting Spider-Man. He basically loses the fight, but still gets away and doesn't even get beaten in the whole story, escaping for another time. He was next in Peter Parker's Spider-Man issue 37, January 2002. The Vulture sees Spider-Man while he is committing a jewel heist and attacks. This time, Spider-Man wasn't after him at first. It's so cold out, Spidey just wants to do this dance another day, but Vulture can't learn new tricks, I guess, and he fights his old enemy. This is a funny tale, and Vulture gets beaten in hand-to-hand combat parts. It ends with Spider-Man on top of Empire State, as Vulture said to meet him at the place they first met, which was actually the Chrysler Building, but whatever. Spider-Man sits there shivering as Vulture pulls a gun on Spider-Man. As a surprise, the Human Torch shows up to help Spidey and burns his wings, sending him spiraling to the ground. There was a version of Vulture that killed Spider-Man while he was with a Spider-Man villain team called the Notorious Nun in Marvel Universe 2001 Millennial versions, but that's it. Next came Spider-Man Tangled Web, issue 11. It is a new fight with the Vulture at nighttime, except the ending has the Vulture find love from his past. April 16th, 2002, the Vulture appeared in the Spider-Man game on the GBA. On the same day as the Game Boy Advance game came out, the PlayStation 2 and Xbox versions were released and had the Vulture as a boss in the game too. And yes, this was Raimi's Spider-Man fighting the Vulture. In my mind, this was so cool. Vulture in the Shocker Robber jewelry store. Shocker snitches the Vulture out though, telling Spider-Man he's hiding out in the old clock tower. Spider-Man goes there, but the Vulture escapes. Later, to the Chrysler Building, the two chase, and Spider-Man stops Vulture in an awesome air fight, arresting him, leaving him hanging upside down. He was in Spider-Man's Tangled Web, issue 13. In a bar, Vulture is called into a secret meeting with other Spider-Man villains. He tells his story from his perspective on Spider-Man always stopping him. The other villains laugh at that. This time, though, chickens help Vulture escape jail as Vulture rips up a gate holding chickens inside, and Spider-Man stops to help the lady get her chickens back. July 2002, he was in Deadline, issue 2. During an interview with Bullseye, we see Vulture in the background at the bar with no name. October and November 2002, the Vulture made an appearance in Spider-Man Blue issues 4 and 5. The Vulture in prison suffers a heart attack. Yep, this is a retelling of issue 48 with the second Vulture Blackie Drago's first appearance. A mysterious figure tells Adrian Toombs the truth about what Blackie Drago did to him and cures him to get revenge on Drago. So this is a cool addition to this Vulture's mythos. This story tells, and Spider-Man during Snowfall fights both of them. The second Vulture gets his wings shoved to him by the first one. And Spider-Man rides the original Vulture, maneuvers him to crash into Blackie, and knocks the two of them out. Adrian Toombs return and get Craven issues 4 through 6. Under the tutelage of AI Craven, the son of Craven the Hunter, Toombs briefly attempted a stint at heroism, but before long he returned to the wrong side of the law. Vulture is treated here as a goofy old man, and it surprisingly fits in a story like this. He barely even fights. In the end, there is a dark, threatening moment with him, though. Him and Craven and Spider-Man all team up at one point, and they fight evil robots, and Vulture actually gets slashed. And then goes back to being a villain. I do not really like this story, so that's why I really skimmed this one. November 2003, he was in Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus, Negative Exposure, issue 2. Today, the Vulture has taken a hostage for a bank robbery. Spider-Man easily whips his wings so he can't steer, so Spidey stops his robbery. Vulture was in a story for the Pulse, issue 2. Yep, it has a moment with Spider-Man fighting the Vulture. June 28th, 2004, the Vulture was in Spider-Man 2 NDS game. July 2004, he was in Spider-Man Unlimited Volume 2, issue 3. One morning, the Vulture is committing a crime, and Spider-Man is going through the actions of arresting the Vulture, like always. The Vulture was in Marvel Knights Spider-Man issues 1 through 4. In the first issue, he's really just on the cover in his original green costume. In issue 2, he is a cameo. Then in issues 3 and 4 are where his story really starts. In issue 3, he and Electro are working together and have gotten $20 million off a job, but Spider-Man causes Vulture to dump it all over the city streets. After a fight with Electro, Spider-Man is in the hospital, and Vulture, in a brand new black and red suit, crashes in to kill Spidey. While dangling Spider-Man over the city, it tells him why he did the job. He has a grandson with leukemia, and that money was going to be used to save his life. But that's not going to go the way Vulture wants, as Black Cat fights Vulture after saving Spider-Man's life and tears his suit apart, knocking him down. The last thing we see is the Owl getting revenge on him since he and Electro stole the $20 million from him. He was in the miniseries called Identity Disc issues 1 through 5, with the help of Sandman, Vulture, Deadpool, Juggernaut, Bullseye, Sabretooth, and they laid siege into the terrorist group AIM headquarters in order to retrieve a disc containing the identities of undercover S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives, and one of them was actually Vulture's daughter. Next, there was a Vulture in What If's Aunt May had died instead of Uncle Ben. In the story, Spider-Man kills the burglar, confesses, and goes to jail, ending his career as a superhero, and Vulture is still a villain in all this. This is what he looked like. March 23rd, 2005, the Vulture was in the game Spider-Man 2 on PSP. Vulture was in Marvel Knights Spider-Man issues 10 and 11. Vulture is a member of Norman Osborn's Sinister 12, and he seems to have a new helmet for his suit. Next for Vulture came in Spider-Man Human Torch issue 2. Vulture fights the Human Torch, and there you go. Vulture later appeared in Marvel Adventures Spider-Man issues 2 and 3. This Sinister Six lineup is just like the first one in Amazing Spider-Man Annual 1, which included the Vulture. Spider-Man, to stop Vulture here, just rides him through a wall, knocking him out. September 19th, 2005, the video game Ultimate Spider-Man came out, and Adrian Toombs made an appearance in it. Toombs works for Boulevard Trask, and he injects Peter with a makeshift Venom suit, but that's really all he does. Because he does not become the supervillain Vulture here. Vulture appeared in Spider-Man House of M issues 3 through 5. Vulture is one of Rhino's friends, and he helps fight Green Goblin for ruining Rhino's chance at a good life he ever had. At the end, Green Goblin gets away, and Vulture stops chasing him so he doesn't get arrested for not being a mutant. Vulture is sad that Spider-Man committed suicide at the end of the miniseries. November 2005, he was in Marvel Adventures Spider-Man issue 7. The Vulture is after a special mask today. But so is Craven the Hunter. The two fight each other, with Craven and Spider-Man working together. Craven breaks off Vulture's wings, and Spider-Man grabs him in a web. Vulture made an appearance in New Thunderbolts 2005, issue 12. Vulture is a villain controlled by Kilgrave, the Purple Man, that fight the Thunderbolts. January 2006, the Ultimate Universe's Vulture first appeared in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 89, then was in issue 90. The Vulture first appears attacking Donald Roxxon. He's wearing a flying combat suit resembling a vulture. Blackie Drago was decommissioned for unknown reasons from S.H.I.E.L.D. and became a criminal mercenary. He was hired by the Tinkerer to kill the Roxxon Corporation CEO Donald Roxxon as part of a revenge scheme. Spider-Man easily stops him though. A Silver Sable shoots him through the back of his suit, and Spider-Man rides him into a giant spider's web. On to Spider-Man Unlimited Volume 3, Issue 13. Vulture is fighting Spider-Man, he coughs on him and escapes. Next, The Century Volume 2, Issue 5. Vulture is a cameo with other Spider-Man villains. He made an appearance in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Issue 5. The Vulture is shown in a flashback of one of many battles with Spider-Man while Peter Parker was still in high school. Sensational Spider-Man Volume 2, Issue 23. Sure, Spider-Man has beaten the Vulture before, but now he seems more animalistic than ever. Vulture, before Spider-Man stopped him, just picked up and dropped people to their deaths so he could eat their bones. Him acting crazy was due to something happening in Spider-Man comics during that time. Vulture made some appearances during Marvel Civil War. He was in Civil War Issue 2, Amazing Spider-Man 533, and Iron Man Volume 4, Issue 14. In Civil War Issue 2, he was captured with the Grim Reaper by Captain America. During Civil War in the comics, Spider-Man reveals to the world that he is Peter Parker, and in prison, Adrian Toombs watches and plans. He is seen in a cell, I think it was called Prison 42, the prison set in the negative zone. Vulture's next appearance was in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man issues 14 through 16. After Spider-Man went rogue, Toombs spoke with Agent Madrox and commented on Spider-Man's inherent weaknesses, that being his unwillingness to use his powers for personal gain. S.H.I.E.L.D. returned his flying harness and encouraged him to hunt down Spider-Man, as he was now considered an outlaw. There is a flashback to when Adrian Toombs' friend Marcus, paralyzed, asks Toombs to kill him, saying his quality of life is 0 because of his legs being basically gone. Adrian refuses though. There is a book signing for Deborah Whitman's Spider-Man book, and Vulture attacks there to get Spider-Man's attention. He almost kills Betty Brant for shooting his armor, and he throws down Flash Thompson. Spider-Man gets hit with a sedative in their fight. In the air though, Vulture suffers a stroke, and Spider-Man carries him into a hospital. Spider-Man secretly visits Adrian in there, and he tells Spider-Man he doesn't want to live. Being a weakling now is unnatural. He says Spider-Man has always been weak, and he doesn't understand it. So Spider-Man suffocates him with his hospital pillow, and Adrian fighting back to breathe again. Spider-Man tells him he fought back hard when Spider-Man's going to let him die. She-Hulk Volume 2, Issue 17 was Vulture's next appearance. He is one of the villains laughing at the new guy. He was in the short story in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Annual 1. Very short. He was just a cameo as one of the villains Spider-Man has to fight. Punisher War Journal Volume 2, Issues 13 through 15 came next. Craven the Hunter has been capturing animal-themed villains. Vulture is in one of his cages. The Vulture can escape though, even with his engineering genius, because Craven broke both of his hands. At the end, the hero frees Vulture, and that's it. We do see some sympathetic parts of Vulture here. It shows the Vulture very grim though. Then, on March 8th, 2008, the spectacular Spider-Man Episode 1, Survival of the Fittest, premiered, with the Vulture as the main villain. In the series, it is Norman Osborn who steals the ideas for a flight suit from Adrian Toombs, promoting Adrian to get his revenge. He has made his own flying suit in secret, red and black, like the Marvel Knights design, and grabs Norman Osborn and hopes for him to tell the world the truth about him and Toombs. He refuses, Spider-Man saves him, and Vulture flies off. The ending has Vulture after Osborn again, with Spider-Man as his protector. Spider-Man destroys one of Vulture's wings by getting it shredded by the Enforcer's helicopter propeller, then takes out his suit, causing them to fall, having Vulture webbed upside down to a lamppost in the very end. He was voiced by Robert Englund, aka Freddy Krueger. On May 31st, 2008, Spectacular Spider-Man Episode 11, Group Therapy, has the Vulture join the Sinister Six. Toombs is going along with Dr. Octopus's grand escape plan from the Raft prison, and as he is the food delivery guy for Sandman and Rhino, plays in glow-in-the-dark goo to lead these two to the other members to break out. The next day, the Vulture, along with the rest of the Sinister Six, fights Spider-Man in his new symbiote suit. Spider-Man can escape these battles mostly because of Vulture cutting off his web swinging, so he rides Vulture to either crash into people like Sandman or mess up Shocker's blasts. He takes off part of Vulture's suit and leaves him caught in a giant spider web. Marvel 1985, issue 1 came next. Vulture is a rogue in the comic. He doesn't do much. This is just a cool picture of him, I guess. October 21st, 2008, the Adrian Toombs Vulture was in the video game Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Yeah, the Vulture is a boss in the game. To stop him, Spider-Man uses a lot of web strikes. He was working in a secret lab for the Kingpin, but Spider-Man beats him and webs him to a billboard. Vulture returns and is infected with the symbiote, taking over the Trask building. Spider-Man defeats Vulture a second time then. One cool thing is Vulture is an ally character you can call in to help fight with you late in the game. Then, 1985, issue 6 came out in November 2008. Vulture is one of many villains still here. Next was the story Fing Fang 4 Return, issue 1. Vulture is a cameo with other Spider-Man villains. He's calling himself the Legal Eagle. Next, Vulture Noir first appeared in Spider-Man Noir issue 1 and was in issues 1 and 2. The Vulture Noir is one of Norman Osborn's crew, the scariest one. It is told to us that the Vulture didn't just kill Uncle Ben in this universe, he ate him because this Vulture is a cannibal. January 2009, he was in Marvel Adventures Superheroes issue 5. Vulture's stealing a rare orb for a client and comes into combat with Spidey. Doctor Strange shows up though and embarrasses Adrian. February 2009, Ultimate Vulture was back in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 129. This Vulture has robbed the place and the Human Torch is on the chase with him. Vulture tries flying into him and throwing grenades, but it doesn't work, and yeah, this is still Blackie Drago Vulture, Ultimate Universe. And finally, Spider-Girl comes in and breaks his wings off. Actually, I should say here, Adrian Toombs never became Vulture in the Ultimate Universe, so yeah. Vulture Noir was in Spider-Man Noir issues 3 and 4. Vulture is sent to Aunt May's house to kill her. Spider-Man Noir kills the Vulture here by shooting him to death. March 2009, he was in Doctor Doom and the Masters of Evil issue 1. The Vulture is in a brand new Sinister Six. Doctor Doom actually fights them and wins. Next, the fourth Vulture made his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man 592 to 594. There is a new flying supervillain today wearing all red and attacking people on the streets. Spider-Man stumbles upon one of these guys, new Vulture's murders. This new Vulture attacks and Spider-Man is caught off guard from this Vulture's new powers, like acid vomit which blinds Spider-Man temporarily. Spider-Man uses Vulture's own costume against him though, as he makes a little retreat after that acid attack by pulling his part of his shirt over his mouth. He actually gets Vulture's head webbed up for a bit, kind of cool. Anyway, to find out information on this new Vulture, Spidey visits Adrian Toombs in jail, but Toombs doesn't know anything other than what's on TV, that this red Vulture goes after criminals, and he's actually angry with his supervillain name being used since this new Vulture is super deadly, and he would be unhappy if Spider-Man was seen killed by him. Spider-Man lures him into the new Vulture into another battle, and they fly over to Yankee Stadium. Spider-Man breaks his arms and leaves him for the police. And then, the Vulture was in the second Sinister Six in Spectacular Spider-Man Episode 16 Reinforcement that premiered June 29th, 2009. This time, the second Sinister Six, the Vulture works with Electro, the two go after Spider-Man. Spider-Man messes with his head by shooting web balls at him, then webbing him into the Christmas tree. Electro accidentally electrocutes him, knocks the tree down flat on Vulture's face, but he escapes because a tunnel is created under the tree, which he flies down. Then came Episode 17, Sheer Strength, that came out July 6, 2009. Vulture is working with Doc Ock, the Master Planner. He helps kidnap Gwen Stacy. And to distract the building workers George Stacy is helping Doc Ock hack into, he has the Vulture attack the homeland with a new weapon upgrade, then Vulture leaves. At the very end of July 29th, 2009, Vulture was an enemy in the mobile game Spider-Man Toxic City. It is the Blackie Drago Vulture of the Ultimate Universe. He was in Avengers The Initiative 27. He is seen at a bar with other Spidey villains. The Vulture made his last appearance in the Spectacular Spider-Man show in episode 23, titled Gangland, October 21st, 2009. In the episode, during a meeting with Tombstone and Silvermane on who should be the new crime lord of New York, Vulture is Dr. Octopus's backup in case of a fight, but gets taken down in a fight by Hammerhead in like 1 second, and that was his last appearance in the series. November 2009, in Marvel Zombies Evil Evolution, we see a zombie Vulture, and he gets killed by Gorilla Girl. January 2010, Vulture was in Fall of the Hulk's MODOK issue 1, but just as a cameo. The fourth Vulture returned in the Gauntlet storyline for Spider-Man Amazing Spider-Man issue 623 and 624. Electro is sent by the Kravinoffs to free the fourth Vulture from jail. In the story, the fourth Vulture is going back into his past to find out just how he got so screwed up. Jimmy, that was his name, he used to work for the mob and clean up their messes. It became too much for him though. He began to remember these things and came after crime bosses involved in his creation. This scared the mob enough to release information, falsely accusing Mayor J. Jonah Jameson of being involved. This news made its way to the Vulture after interrogating a captured crime boss. Spider-Man saves Jameson and tries to web the Vulture up. With his power to vomit acid, he is able to escape and force the truth out of a crime boss involved in his creation past. Jimmy suggested to have someone mutate into a human-vulture hybrid using the same technology that created the Scorpion and the Fly. However, the impression that the operation would cause memory loss, he was chosen to be the candidate and was forcibly turned into a new Vulture. The experiment worked, but Jimmy went rogue. After learning the whole truth, Vulture 4 flies into the night. He was in Web of Spider-Man 2009, issue 5, February 2010. Toombs is brought into Fittest proves his cell. He is the biggest leader at the prison, and he forces Adrian Toombs to help him escape, or people on the outside will kill Toombs' family. Vulture has no choice but to help, and he builds Titus a flying harness, and he goes off. Toombs, though, is not as frail and non-threatening as he seems. He too has people on the outside who kill all the brutes threatening his family, and he controls the flying harness to go higher and higher until Titus suffocates. Vulture is an Amazing Spider-Man Marvel Digital Comics exclusive number 16, just as a cameo. A New Realities Vulture was in Spider-Ham 25th anniversary issue. Here, Vulture is called the Buzzard. Next came Spider-Man Fever issue 1, August 2010. Vulture is out of prison again and gets webbed up by Spider-Man in some random guy's apartment building. September 7th, 2010, Vulture Noir appeared in my favorite Spider-Man video game to date, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Still in the continuity of Spider-Man Noir comics, the Vulture is actually alive. He survived getting shot and is working for Norman Osborn again, collecting pieces of the Tablet of Order and Chaos. Spider-Man Noir hears about this and hunts Vulture down throughout the level. There gets to a moment where he burns up an entire building, so you save the hostages, then take down the gunman and with stealth, or just speed up the thugs with your fists. At the very end, Vulture uses the power of the tablet and it gives him teleportation powers, making the fight a bit more frustrating, but Spider-Man Noir knocks him out. This level ends with the Vulture able to be arrested by the police. Vulture Noir was voiced by Steve Blum. I guess I kinda messed up about saying Vulture 2099 had his last appearance because he returned in the DS version of Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, and of course, he fought Spider-Man 2099. He has a piece of the tablet and you can quickly defeat him. The fourth Vulture made a cameo in Amazing Spider-Man issue 644 later in September 2010. Vulture 4 is one of the characters trying to get Harry Osborn and Lily Hollister's baby to give to Dr. Octopus for a big reward. He is ultimately just a cameo though. December 2010, the Vulture was in Marvel Adventures Spider-Man Volume 2, Issue 9. Vulture begins robbing rival mobsters. A mob war that will tear New York City apart is in the brewing. Spider-Man and Wolverine stop his green greed. Ultimate Vulture made his last appearance to date in Ultimate Spider-Man issues 156 to 159. Vulture is one of the escapees when Green Goblin breaks them out. Blackie Drago goes to the Tinkerer for a suit again. When Spider-Man confronts the Sinister Six, the Vulture flies straight at him, and Spider-Man swings him around and out of there. But Vulture drops grenades on Spider-Man when he flies back. But when Aunt May shoots Electro and Electro explodes, the blast knocks out Vulture. He was in Amazing Spider-Man You're Hired, issue 1. Vulture stealing money from an ATM and Spider-Man stops him. It turns out that the bag had exploding red ink in it, so gotcha, Vulture. Just because it is an official media appearance on paper, I'm going to mention it, that Vulture made his only appearance in the Marvel What The Specials, episode 14. Vulture was flying over Africa and MODOK saw him. The episode was called Earth Day. And a sad part of this video, really sad, because on May 6, 2011, Spider-Man 4 starring Tobey Maguire was supposed to release, but of course the movie got cancelled, and the Vulture was going to be the main villain of the film. The best thing we have for this is in concept art. Sam Raimi would have made the Vulture the most dangerous threat Spider-Man has ever come across to date in the franchise, and by the art, it looks great. I think everyone here wishes it happened. The pros online are confident that if it happened, Vulture would have been played by John Malkovich. At the end of August 2011, Vulture made his last Marvel Adventures appearance in Spider-Man Marvel Adventures Volume 2, Issue 17. Vulture is very important in this story, as he lies and tells a story about Spider-Man beating him up. That's why he's not fighting with the Six, but in reality, he was stealing Aunt May's purse from her. But Aunt May shames him badly enough for Vulture to think about what he just did, and his decision haunts him for today. The last page has Vulture arrive at Peter and May's front door, giving her purse back. In the same month, and then in September 2011, the fourth Vulture was in The Punisher Volume 9, Issues 2 and 3. He was hired by the Exchange to kill the Punisher. The two proceed in a bloody fight. He lifts the Punisher into the sky, but Punisher manages to stab Vulture a bunch and then gets dropped, with Vulture 4 actually dying here. On October 4th, 2011, Vulture had an Easter egg in the video game Spider-Man Edge of Time, as one of the newspapers has Vulture committing a crime. Then, when the Alchemax timeline shows up, he has a chicken wing restaurant like Colonel Sanders' KFC. The original Vulture returned in main continuity, fighting Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man 674 and 675, November and December 2011. A boy named Mitchell is met by a girl named Angela Death. She tells him that he could have things better than spider powers, and she could teach him how to fly. This was after Spider Island. They commit a crime with their new powers of flight and head back to Home Nest, where the oldest Spider-Man enemy is waiting for them. In my opinion, this is where Vulture became a little bit like the Batman villain Penguin. Vulture tells a story while threatening the new member of his group, very creepy here, like his noir counterpart. Spider-Man tracks down where this new gang is and follows, but Vulture meets them all halfway and almost kills the new guy. Spider-Man with his new webbing blocks radio waves that Vulture used to control the gang's flying harnesses, defeats these fools, and then battles the Vulture, who uses his magnetic technology to provide himself with super strength, but the villain escapes in the end. March 2012, Marvel Avengers Alliance came out and the Vulture was in it. If he attacked, it would be Wing Strikes. It was a phone game. Also in 2012, he was in the mobile game Marvel War of Heroes. August 2012, the fourth Vulture made his last appearances today in Sensational Spider-Man issues 33.1 and 33.2. And, as you can see on the comic covers on screen, this was the month of Spider-Man's 50-year anniversary. It is a story set in the past, with the fourth Vulture being the villain. It is a normal fight between the two until Vulture barfs acid, causing a shipping container to drop, revealing human trafficking victims. The Vulture explains to Carly Cooper later that he only kills the people who deserve to die and wants to find the traffickers. On the last page, the Vulture is ready to serve his justice against these guys who trafficked the woman. The Vulture Return in Superior Spider-Man Issue 3, February 2013, and if you didn't know, Superior Spider-Man is the villain Dr. Octopus in Peter Parker's body, being his own Spider-Man, Superior Spider-Man. I mentioned that because the Vulture stuff starts with Peter Parker seeing one of Otto's memories, as during the first time the Sinister Six teamed up, Vulture told Doc Ock that he always just tried to get one big score. Spider-Man just got in his way. Superior Spider-Man finds Toombs and wants to reason with him. Ock will give Vulture all the money he wanted if he gives up his life of crime, but Vulture thinks he's just joking and sends his minions to attack him. When Superior Spider-Man learns that he was using kids to do his dirty work, he snaps. The Vulture runs away, but Spider-Man stays on his tail. Superior Spider-Man is ready to stop Vulture for good now. He rides Vulture down into crashing into his spider signal, almost murdering him. This crash actually blinds him, and he returned in Superior Spider-Man issues 11 through 13. Vulture's in the same prison as other Spider-Man villains who have been brutalized by Superior Spider-Man. When Alistair Smythe, the Spider Slayer, begins to break out, he has his bots crawl onto and into Vulture, giving him a new red suit that shoots daggers. When Alistair Smythe gets defeated, the bots all die and Vulture, blind again, gets tased. Vulture was in Superior Team-Up Issue 1. Vulture is with the other Sinister Six members in a giant jar. And then, the Vulture was a character in LEGO Marvel Superheroes, the video game, October 22nd, 2013. He was in Deadpool Mission 4, which unlocked at 20 gold bricks. He and Howard the Duck have taken over Marvel HQ and captured Stan Lee. This level was actually revealed at Comic-Con 2013 first. The Vulture was part of the Sinister Six here, and he could fly and had a gun to shoot bullets. His design was the classic green suit straight out of the 60s. The next story he was in Superior Team Up issues 5 through 7. And in it, Superior Spider-Man has broken Vulture out of prison to use him in his Superior Six superhero team under some kind of mind control. When the mind control breaks, the Vulture and the others plan to kill Superior Spider-Man, but first Vulture is going to use Lightmaster's machine. Vulture in the skies gets beaten by Sun Girl. April 17th, 2014, the Vulture's wings were seen in the video game The Amazing Spider-Man 2, hinting at him being a villain in the sequel which never was created. On May 2nd, 2014, the movie The Amazing Spider-Man 2 released, and yeah, Adrian Toombs wasn't in it, but we did see his wings in a glass case, so that's big enough for me to mention it in this video. One popular theory was that Adrian Toombs was not going to be the Vulture, but Donald Menken, who was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. He would have became the Vulture, and being Vulture was also teased in the end credit scene that he was going to be a member of the Sinister Six universe in the end credits. Of course, that didn't happen either. June 2014, he was in Original Sins issue 1. This is still supposed to be Adrian Toombs' Vulture, but why the heck does he have facial hair? It's just a little shot of Spider-Man fighting Vulture. And to Amazing Spider-Man Learning to Crawl issues 1.2 and 1.3, this is a flashback story. The new character, Clash, tries to stop Vulture from escaping, but fails. And Spider-Man is the one to confront him, then lose like their first fight in Amazing Spider-Man issue 2. September 10th, 2014, the Vulture is in the mobile game Spider-Man Unlimited. He was in the Sinister Six in this game. On September 28th, 2014, the Vulture arrived in the cartoon Ultimate Spider-Man, episode 58, titled The Vulture. Spider-Man tracks a new flying creature down into Oscorp's penthouse, and he is kept in a jar, looking like a gothic guy. Fighting Octobots, it wakes up Vulture, and he transforms. He fights Spider-Man and is shown to have a sonic scream. Spider-Man webs him to a wall and he transforms back. Vulture doesn't know anything about himself. He says his existence is meaningless. Anyway, he escapes his little web net to a wall he was in and goes to the Osborn penthouse, another one, to get Harry to tell him where Norman Osborn is. Harry doesn't know, and during this, Vulture remembers some six-armed man. That is where Spider-Man takes Vulture to Dr. Octopus, who is still stuck in jail. Doc Ock tells Vulture they made a deal a long time ago for him to be turned into a Vulture, and then says the words "carry-on feeder," which those words transform the guy back into Vulture. Vulture breaks Dr. Octopus out of jail because of Doc's mind control, and Spider-Man fights Doc Ock and Vulture at the penthouse again. Vulture decides to kill Dr. Octopus if his memories of his past are truly gone. Spider-Man stops him though. At the end, the Vulture has Taskmaster call to him, and call him Adrian, so Vulture agrees to work with Taskmaster to learn more about his past. Also, the Vulture in this cartoon was voiced by Tom Kenny. On October 14th, he returned in episode 60 titled The New Warriors. Taskmaster and his team called the Thunderbolts has the Vulture in it. As Vulture fights the New Warriors and hunts for revenge against Doc Ock, he destroys the jet wing Doc Ock was in to send it crashing down back into the Tricarrier. Almost a year later, October 3rd, 2015, the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon Vulture was in Ultimate Spider-Man episode 75 as a cameo though. And what was an annoying little cameo, you see him right there in the bottom left for less than 1 second, but I mention it because this video is supposed to have everything about anything with the Vulture. He returned February 2016 in A Year of Marvel's Infinite comic, February. The Vulture is attacking innocents and on Valentine's Day no less. So, him and Spider-Man have a little fight around the place while quipping back and forth. Honestly, I was surprised I liked this comic as much as I did. Vulture tries to escape by putting riders on a blimp in danger after he pops it by flying through it, but Spider-Man saves the blimp, and then sends the Vulture crashing into the river and dives in after Toombs to save his life. He also, does some CPR to save his life. Kind of a funny scene. After that, the Vulture tied up, Spider-Man can enjoy Valentine's Day, and so can the Vulture in his own little way. Ultimate Spider-Man episode 82 titled Iron Vulture on March 6, 2016, the Vulture was back. Vulture has a new Iron Vulture suit. He is attacking Norman Osborn because if he does, he will get his memories back from Octavius. Vulture fights Iron Patriot, Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man. Vulture has steel claws here and acts a lot more evil, as if he is enjoying almost killing Iron Patriot. Vulture even refuses help from S.H.I.E.L.D. At the end, Doc Ock infects Vulture with Octobots, and that turns his costume black and red, making him no more than a weapon for Ock's use now. Episode 85 of Ultimate Spider-Man was titled Beached, and that's when he showed up. In his new form, Spider-Man and Iron Spider are looking for Vulture in this episode, so he doesn't become another member of the Doc Ock's Sinister Six, but trying to bring him in peacefully, Vulture carries Spider-Man away to an island. Vulture still has got his super powerful sonic scream and escapes the two Spider-Men. This kind of cements Vulture as a member of Ock's new Sinister Six. Then, in the comic, the unbeatable Squirrel Girl beats up the Marvel Universe, came out in October 2016. Vulture is getting beaten by Spider-Man and Squirrel Girl. December 2016, Vulture was in Marvel Chess Collection 1994, so that's kind of cool, maybe. It's kind of a retro thing. On January 7th, 2017, the last two episodes of the Ultimate Spider-Man TV series came out, with the Vulture in both of them, episodes 103 and 104. Vulture is a mindless slave to Dr. Octopus still. Spider-Man captures him in webs, but he escapes. Later, along with Doc Ock, Rhino, Scorpion, Crossbones, and Craven the Hunter, make up the superior Sinister Six. As plain old Peter Parker, since Doc Ock got rid of his power, Spidey grabs a jetpack and flies off to do something, but Vulture comes by and Spider-Man webs him to a wall. And in the end, the last episode of this series, Spider-Man gets a cure to reverse mutations Ock has done to 3 of his team members, and he cures the Vulture, giving him back all of his memories. And then came Black Panther World of Wakanda issue 6, April 2017. Here he is as a cameo in The Bar with No Name. He was in Free Comic Book Day 2017, Secret Empire May 2017. The Vulture is back, wearing a protective helmet for the first time. This new suit Vulture is in is labeled the Falcon suit, so I guess to call it the Vulture Falcon flying suit. It is another sunny showdown between the Amazing Spider-Man and the Ruler of the Skies. The two trade blows with each other, and Spider-Man almost wins. But the Trapster's daughter pastes the two to a wall and steals some of Vulture's loot for the day, ending the story with Vulture laughing a bit. June 30th, 2017, the Vulture was in a VR game. It was called Spider-Man Homecoming Virtual Reality Experience. In the VR experience, Spider-Man shoots web lines at Vulture's wings to defeat him. Pretty cool for a Spider-Man VR experience, though. Vulture finally properly made it to the big screen in the movie Spider-Man Homecoming on July 7th, 2017, played in live action by Michael Keaton. In the movies, they changed Adrian from being an engineer screwed over by his business partner to a blue-collar worker who lost his salvage job due to Tony Stark's damage control crew coming in. His company was called Best Men Salvage. He decides since he and his gang have Chitauri tech left over, they will turn it into weapons to help them steal all the tech they want, turning it into weapons and trafficking them. Adrian Toombs dresses up as a big bird, the Vulture, and there's one of Spider-Man's oldest enemies in the MCU. After 4 years of doing this, he runs into superheroes like Spider-Man. They tangle a bit because his crewmate was testing tech, which alerted Spider-Man, so Spider-Man tries to stop them, but Vulture grabs Spidey, flies him above the clouds to kill him, but Spider-Man's automatic parachute saves him. One of his crewmates is the Shocker, who causes craziness and almost gets themselves exposed, which would destroy them, so Toombs fires him. Shocker threatens him that he'll expose his crimes to his family, so Vulture hits him with the vaporizing gun. Actually, he thought it was the anti-gravity gun, so that scene happens. The Vulture gets a tip of a damaged control truck moving tech to a vault, so he shows up to steal it. Spider-Man shows up too and bugs him, but Vulture gets away without the stuff he tried to steal. At base, Tinkerer is talking about a big score, stealing an airborne target of stuff from Avengers Tower, but Vulture just brushes it off because it's kind of too big of a plan. There then is the iconic ferry scene where Adrian Toombs wants to steal or sell weapons to Matt Gargan. With Spider-Man there though and the FBI, the Vulture forgets this and attacks Spider-Man head-on with a Chitauri gun. One point to make, Vulture tried to crush Spider-Man with the car, but the car hit Matt Gargan, knocking him into the water. Anyway, there's a little battle with web trapeze tricks leading to Vulture's weapon blowing up, splitting the ferry in half, and Vulture flying away as Spider-Man tries to save them. At base, the new Shocker is about to quit, so Adrian plans to do the big airborne robbery Tinkerer was talking about, one last job. The night of his heist is the night of his daughter Liz Allen in the movie's universe's Homecoming, and Peter Parker is her date. We learn that his family is normal and nice, all oblivious of his life as the Vulture. As the car trip happens, Adrian figures out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. When they're at the school and Liz has gone in, he thanks him for saving his daughter's life and warns him not to go after him or his crew again. Peter ignores this and goes after Vulture. He goes to his hideout and Toombs tries to reason with Spider-Man, telling him he is misunderstood basically, then buries Spider-Man under the building as it crashes on top of them thanks to his remote control wings. Anyway, Vulture has new wings built by Tinkerer for tonight and goes to the cargo plane to rob it. Anyway, Spider-Man destroys Vulture's robbery, causing them in the plane to crash down. This takes even more wind out of Spidey, as Vulture pounds him on the beach over and over again. Seeing some cargo crates, he leaves Peter to go fly off with them. But his new wings are malfunctioning, and Spider-Man tries to tell him that, but he ignores it, and his wings go up in flames. Spider-Man webs him to a crate den with a note, sending Vulture to jail. Vulture, in the end credits, is confronted by Matt Gargan about having friends on the outside. As he's heard, Vulture knows who Spider-Man really is. Vulture keeps Spider-Man's secret identity for now, probably out of respect for saving his daughter. Anyway, so far, that was Adrian Toombs, the Vulture, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, his only live-action movie appearance to date. Then the Vulture, same design, was in Marvel Avengers Academy game. He was in another game next, Marvel Future Fight. Here, you were able to use his classic uniform too. And for another mobile game, the Vulture was in a character in Marvel Contest of Champions. And then he appeared in Marvel Puzzle Quest. On August 19th, 2017, Marvel's Spider-Man TV show premiered, with Vulture as the villain for the first episode, titled Horizon High Part 1. Vulture's henchmen are robbing an armored car, but Spider-Man shows the guy up and stops him, so Vulture attacks Spider-Man. Vulture here has a sonic scream. Spider-Man holds on to Vulture as he flies high to escape, with Spider-Man still hanging on. He holds onto a web line, makes the tense force strong enough to send Vulture shooting down the street into a newspaper truck. But Vulture gets back up, shatters glass windows are all around them, and while Spider-Man saves the innocents, Vulture gets away. Adrian Toombs was an employee at Horizon High, but was fired for stealing equipment. He attacks Midtown High to steal vibranium. That's when Spider-Man stops him and defeats him. September 16th, 2017, Vulture returned in Marvel Spider-Man Episode 7 Symbiotic Relationship. Norman released Adrian Toombs from prison so he can build more suits to make a Vulture force. Alistair Smythe wore one of his suits, so Toombs and Smythe, both as Vultures, fought symbiote Spider-Man and failed to kill him. Then, September 30th, Vulture was in Spider-Man 2017 Episode 10 titled Craven's Amazing Hunt. Vulture was used to knock out Craven the Hunter. He was sent by Norman Osborn since Norman hired Craven to kill Spider-Man, but he wasn't following instructions. He was stopped later by Ultimate Spider-Man later in Osborn's secret lab. September and October 2017, Vulture was in Peter Parker The Spectacular Spider-Man 2017 issues 4 and 5. The Vulture was just hired to blow up the Tinkerer's lab for him, but blowing up the lab with Spider-Man in it is a little treat for him. He is also kidnapping this man named Mason. Spider-Man and his sister Teresa Parker chase Vulture in the sky, save Mason, and pull Vulture down for a fight. Spider-Man slams him down and launches him across the rooftop, breaking his helmet, and is about to demolish his suit. With that not about to happen to him, Adrian flies super high and escapes the two heroes. On November 14th, 2017, the Vulture returned to the LEGO series in LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2. The classic version of Vulture appeared here, but so did the 2017 Spider-Man Homecoming movie design. Both Vultures can fly, and they have the Gravity Mine ability, which I think only Vulture and Star-Lord have that ability in the game. He costs 150,000 studs. Vulture Homecoming is after doing a race, and Classic Vulture is one of the few boss fights in the open world you get after they're completing an entire area, which is Xandar for him. They can fly and punch, do panels, and repair. Vulture Classic has a special move where he pins a guy to the ground with feathers, then slams him, and Homecoming Vulture can fire continuous purple blasts. End of December 2017 to February 2018 was Peter Parker The Spectacular Spider-Man issues 298 and 299 and the 300th issue. In this story, Vulture is working with Tinkerer to kill Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man shows up to fight. But Black Panther also shows up and shreds Vulture's wings with his claws, and as Spider-Man fights Whiplash at the same time, Vulture escapes. Here, we see his fingers and toes are like real Vulture talons. After that cool moment, Vulture is only in 2 more panels over the next 2 issues, just as a cameo. During that last storyline on January 28th, 2018, Vulture was in 2 episodes of Spider-Man 2017, episodes 17 and 18, The Rise of Doc Ock Part 3 and 4. Unfortunately, Vulture was in a non-speaking role and just helped fight some creatures. Vulture was dead in Amazing Spider-Man Annual 42. Another cameo appearance. With that said, It reminds me a lot of his appearance in the novel Spider-Man Revenge of the Sinister Six. He was in Marvel's Spider-Man cartoon in episode 24 to Hobgoblin Part 1. Vulture is part of this show Sinister Six, along with the Spider Slayer, Steel Spider, Doc Ock, Rhino, and Spider-Man himself. He just fights the Hobgoblin with his team, though. Next was the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl issue 31 appearance. He is seen being in a fight with Spidey. Then came Hunt for Wolverine, Adamantium Agenda issue 1. Vulture is just a rug to put in this issue, like a lot of his appearances in the 2010s, I feel like. July 2nd, 2018, that was on my birthday, Vulture returned in Marvel's Spider-Man episode 29, Rise Above It All. There's a group called the Wave Riders who have stolen Vulture's tech. Here, we learn the truth about Vulture. He reveals his origin and he wants the Wave Riders stopped. But later, Vulture works with them as the Wave Riders being his minions and they fight Spider-Man. The hero wins though. Also, Vulture does this move which basically makes him a flying drill. Like, what in the world? July 22nd, 2018, the Funko Pop of Homecoming Vulture was in Marvel Funko Pop Shorts number 11. Next came Amazing Spider-Man 2018 issue 3, or call it Amazing Spider-Man issue 804. Peter Parker watches as another Spider-Man fights Vulture one day. September 7th, 2018, the Vulture was a villain in the video game Marvel Spider-Man, or as many others call it, Spider-Man PS4. He was voiced by Dwight Schultz, who returned to voicing Vulture from the Spider-Man 2002 game. Vulture is a longtime Spider-Man enemy who is in the raft already from a previous battle before the game starts. Then, during the big breakout of the Sinister Six, Vulture and Electro, Rhino, and Scorpion with Mr. Negative escape, despite Spider-Man's attempts. The Vulture agrees to work with Dr. Octopus because he is suffering from spinal cancer from wearing his supervillain suit for all these years. So, after Doc Ock's trap is triggered, Vulture grabs Spider-Man in a rope and drags him to the smokestack area of the city, and he and Electro team up to try and kill him. There's a lot of web swinging and web shots and web zips to stop these two, but eventually either Electro or Vulture will have been webbed up so much that you can get close and punch them in the face or whatever so many times. Sometimes a cool cutscene happens where Vulture flies through, basically a boulder even, and hits Electro. Then, at the end, Spider-Man sends Vulture sliding on the ground, ready to be arrested by the police. And he appeared in Amazing Spider-Man issue 807 next. Vulture is chasing someone who betrayed him, but Taskmaster and Black Ant capture him in an electric net. He was then in Amazing Spider-Man 814. Apparently, Vulture either saw or did it himself. Somebody escaped and got hunted and recaptured by Taskmaster and Black Ant again. He reappeared in the Spider-Man Hunted storyline, which was in Amazing Spider-Man issues 817 to 818 to start. Really, these comics just showed us that Vulture is also trapped in Central Park with the other animal-themed characters like Scorpion and Spider-Man. He was then in issues 819 to 821. Vulture has a standout role here as he gets D-list animal-themed villains to work with him to survive Craven's hunt. Vulture and Gibbon are fleeing together, and then Vulture attacks Gibbon, leaving Gibbon to be killed by the Hunter bot so he can make a clean getaway. When the villains confront him about Gibbon, Vulture tells a lie about how Gibbon was a hero and sacrificed his life for Toombs. Yeah, Vulture has a comical moment here, but Spider-Man tries to expose him on that. It doesn't work. And then Vulture's group decides to fight head-on against the Hunter bots. Adrian also gets Rhino to calm down and not to kill Spider-Man. Vulture was in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, issue 20.HU. The comic opens up with the villains chanting Vulture's name. But in the sky, Vulture gets a signal to follow, and he meets Arcade, the X-Men villain who built the Hunter bots for Craven. Arcade provides Adrian with the Hunter Killer, a device capable of incapacitating a Hunter bot. And yeah, he uses that tool to become a leader to every other villain in the park. And then he was in issues 822 to 824. Vulture talks with Lady Octopus about him having the other villains die against the Hunter bots as pawns for his plan. And Vulture claims victory even after all the Hunter bots have been deactivated. That is when the Vulture puts together a new supervillain team, the Savage Six. He is the leader of 5 other animal-themed supervillains. He was in Absolute Carnage vs. Deadpool issue 1. One of the many Spider-Man villains in a big group who chased Spider-Man and Deadpool for a page. He was in Marvel Comics 1000. The Vulture steals Chitauri's stuff, probably a reference to his movie counterpart. Next for Toombs came in Miles Morales Spider-Man issue 10. The Vulture's personal life is shown more here. His son walked out on his wife and daughter, so Vulture, the grandfather, helps them with money every now and then. His granddaughter becomes the superhero Starling 7 years later and fights crime with Miles Morales' Spider-Man. Vulture was in The Amazing Mary Jane, issues 1 through 3, September to October 2019. Vulture is in the Savage Six. He is their leader, and they are mad at a Hollywood film using them in a movie without their permission. So Vulture and the Savage Six supervillain group goes there to destroy the place. Mysterio, who is the movie producer, helps the crew get away. December 2019, in Spider-Man 2099 Volume 4 Issue 1 shows us the Vulture's criminal gang in the future. On November 17th to December 1st, 2019, the Vulture was in 3 episodes of Marvel's Spider-Man 2017, episodes 49 through 51, Goblin King Part 2, 3, and 4. Looking at this picture might make it seem like I'm lying if you have not watched this story, but I promise. Here, this guy's Adrian Toombs. He is not Vulture anymore, but the Goblin King, which at that is just a bigger Hobgoblin of the show, but a supervillain. Hobgoblin is Harry Osborn in this show, and he's a good guy. Yeah, I kind of hate this show. So many mix-ups that turn out wasted and even horrible. He and his Goblin King have waited and planned to take over New York. He fights Doc Ock in Spider-Man's body, Superior Spider-Man, but to stop Goblin King, like in the comics, kind of, Doc Ock sacrifices himself so Peter can be Spider-Man again, and doing that stops Vulture. He has Vulture tech guard still. I mean, this feels more of like a Green History thing for the Green Goblin, so I'm just gonna say all that. You know, this is it with Vulture for the show for now. Next came The Amazing Mary Jane, issues 4 and 5. Vulture is still after the movie crew, and they capture a guy working on it called Charlie. And Vulture goes head-to-head with Mysterio and loses the fight. Vulture, in July 2020, was in Free Comic Book Day Spider-Man and Venom, and, a little spoiler, this is the last real thing the Vulture has done to date. This story is called Moonlighting, and Spider-Man is seen fighting Vulture again. He actually shatters his helmet completely. Black Cat is with Spidey tonight, and they have fun teasing Vulture. Vulture had, like, fear gas or something that was in his backpack. Black Cat makes it explode, and he ends the story screaming about how spiders and cats eat birds, and he's a bird-themed supervillain. Hey, it was a free comic. On October 7th, 2020, the Vulture was in The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 850. Adrian Toombs is visiting his granddaughter again, but seeing Spider-Man spooks him out. So his daughter, Starling, puts on her winged suit and fights Spider-Man. At first, Spider-Man doesn't understand. Then he tells her that Adrian has killed people. But Spider-Man has gotten hit with a tranq dart because of her, but she still leaves, believing that Spider-Man was right and Adrian is a supervillain. Okay, and on November 12th, 2020, in the video game Spider-Man Miles Morales, it was confirmed that Vulture's origin story was the same in this universe as the comics, that his old business partner Gregory Bestman betrayed him, and Vulture is a boss fight in the game. It's just a hologram version of him, though. Vulture is in the first trailer for the Morbius the Living Vampire movie. It seems like he breaks out of jail, and I think he breaks out with Matt Gargan and Cletus Cassidy. Right now, it seems like the film will come out January 21st, 2022. Also, if my theory is correct, maybe he will be in Venom Let There Be Carnage, just for a quick cameo or reference. And yeah, up to date, that's everything actually with the Vulture. Now, I know this was fake. Did Jimmy Kimmel look for the next solo Spider-Man movie where Spider-Man fights Vulture in front of his school on school buses? But hey, it seems like the new Spider-Man movie will have Vulture in it in some way. And this isn't talking about the future of Vulture stuff here. Maybe he'll be with the Sinister Six even, and personally, hopefully with the Spider-Verse. The movie is set to come out December 17th, 2021, so we'll know by then. And I know release dates for the movies will be weird watching them live, but hey, this is future stuff, at least in the Spider-Man / Sony universe. I guess also / MCU. And there you go. Phew. Finally, what a ginormous video. That was it with my friends. The complete history of Spider-Man's oldest, or at least second oldest, enemy. Everything about anything with the Vulture up to April 2021. All versions of him, all appearances in media, definitely every big story appearance that was amazing to have done. I like talking about the cool moments of Adrian Toombs out of his suit, and just looking at all of this stuff, remembering that he is essential to the Spider-Man supervillain team, the Sinister Six, and I guess we can say he found a cure to aging. This video, it made me go a little crazy with excitement and shock that it's all done. Everything with one of Spider-Man's greatest enemies all in one video now on YouTube. After all that, I don't know what else I need from Vulture. Well, he better be in LEGO Marvel Superheroes 3, and if there is a LEGO Marvel Avengers 2, the Infinity Saga, I want him in there too. I really hope they continue with him in the movies, and that he gets more time in the Spider-Man PlayStation universe. The Vulture was the first traditionally costumed supervillain Spider-Man ever faced, having previously only squared off against the Super Spy Chameleon in issue 1. And up until Amazing Spider-Man issue 676, Vulture had been the only Spider-Man foe, besides Electro, to be a member of every incarnation of the Sinister Six. He was also in the Sinister 7 and Sinister 12. He has also never once served as leader of any of those groups. Stan Lee originally envisioned the Vulture as a fat person and wanted Steve Ditko to use actor Sidney Greenstreet as inspiration for his appearance. Ditko differed, believing that a large villain would seem almost passive and an easier enemy to escape from compared to somebody thin and fast. Also, I forgot to mention, Vulture had two voice actors in the 90s show. When he was old, it was Eddie Albert. When he becomes young, it was Alan Johnson. In the Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon show, kind of in the same universe, I mean, I guess technically not, but whatever. He was voiced by Scott McNeil. Ben Kingsley was almost going to be Vulture in Spider-Man 3 originally, and I remember hearing something that he would have been MJ's dad or stepdad. If he was going to be her stepdad, would he have been the guy we see in Spider-Man 1? I think the next big Spider-Man villain I will make a complete history of video on will be Electro. One thing I wanted to say is, I know I missed out on little unnoticeable dimensions Vulture must have been in and appeared for a cameo for, but this video had over 99.9% of Vulture's stuff, so I'm good with that. But if someone wants to comment what I missed, I really appreciate it, honestly. That way the video page will really have everything with the Vulture. I can't believe no one noticed on my complete history of Chameleon video that I never mentioned Chameleon 2099, the villain of my favorite Sandman story, which was even on my top 5 best Sandman stories list. So, there, I made and admitted a big mistake on my Chameleons video, and hey, if I made one on Vulture here, I will mention it in my next giant video. And that's the end of this look at Vulture's history. I hope you enjoyed and are even excited for new ones I make. If you watched this whole video, that's amazing. If you learned something new about Vulture, like I did making this video, well, that was my goal. And if you are happy you learned new things about Vulture and liked the video, that makes me very happy. Once again, thank you all for watching, and have a great day.